Finally, I can start fucking streaming. Oh, fucking God. Get my blood pressure up through the goddamn roof.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, CMS 18 is being laggy. Of course. Oh, what the fuck? Was there an update to CMS 18 recently? Or to Steam?
Why?
No, because for some reason it's being slow as fuck as of late.
Hmm.
Like, literally, it's freeze-framed right now. Like, Thank you! No, I don't want to work on this truck. Yeah, it's never this laggy when I'm normally streaming.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, man.
Alright, let's see. Got nothing there. We already got you, we already got you, we already got you, we already got you.
By the way, I talked to NJ a little while ago about our idea for the barbecue, and he's not opposed to it.
That's good. Let's see.
Because he had no ideas, so he's like, yeah, we'll try it.
Right. Oh, fuck it, we'll go to this one. Alright. So, the whole fucking reason, the reason it's taken an asinine amount of time to get to this point, that I wanted to do this stream, now that I finally can fucking do this stream.
Yeah, you want to talk about the Hemi, right?
Yeah. God, blood pressure through the roof for fucking aggravation from computers. This is why I like carburetors. I don't want someone fucking getting into an ECU and tinkering with shit that isn't supposed to be tinkered with unless it's a closed system. This is why I like, if I'm going to deal with EFI of any kind, there is no Bluetooth on that vehicle. Bluetooth is the sin against creation because it allows easy access and manipulation of all kinds of car statistics and data logging. And that, to me, fucking is just no. Absolutely fucking not. And, of course...
One of those evenings, eh?
Not only that, I just realized my screen is not centered.
Yeah, on the stream. I probably should have mentioned that on the recording I looked at.
Alright, let's try that. Let's see. Does that work? Yes? Well, kind of. Now if the game would just kindly stop taking an asinine amount of time to load.
Oh, I just loaded up the stream. You basically said exactly what you were saying on stream from like 5 minutes ago.
What now?
You said asinine, like almost exact same time as the stream said asinine from when you said asinine before.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh my god. That was funny. Just think the timing was almost perfect.
Nice. At least it's fucking loading. At least it's fucking loading. Upside is, hopefully tomorrow that truck goes away. Might be talking to Jim about a replacement motor for my big van.
Just remind me again, what happened with the big van?
Alright, so what I should have done with the big van. For those of you who are not aware, I am the proud owner and will forever be proud of that van, even though it is currently engineless. Bought a 1997 Dodge high-top B2500 short wheelbase van. And basically what it was a towing package 1500 that they bumped up to a 2500 and gave the Mark III LE treatment from some kind of camper dealership. This means high top roof, so you could almost, and I'm 5'11", stand up inside the thing. You got to tilt your head because it's a little cockeyed, but it got a 14-inch cathode tube TV, VHS player that at the time when it was new worked, and 16 and or 32-bit console port access on the side, which was, ooh, that's high cotton in 1997. This was, in 1997's equivalent, when adjusted for inflation's money, a $50,000 to $60,000 vehicle today. It had, when I bought it, 212,000 miles, and sounded more like 292,000 miles. Let's see, what swap options are available? Tell me there's swap options. Please say there's swap options. Game, I'd like you to respond right about now. Oh, yes, please.
Oh, God. Yeah.
I think I'm going to work on the Lowrider Impala. And is this thing stock? Or does my Survivor Roadrunner have a new motor in it?
Yeah, there's still issues in 1.14 snapshots where like chunks just refuse to load for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Let's move you. Let's give you some freshening up because I haven't worked on you in a hot sec. Yes. Alright, so now that I finally can talk about it, let's talk HEMIs. So, once I get back to the garage, let's discuss ad nauseum what the significance of what Dodge is proposing, what the implications are of it, what it could mean long term. Well, I guess that's implication, so repeating myself here. And where does Dodge go from here and why this matters? So let's take a trip to the past. The year is 1954. America has just come out of the Second World War, the victorious winner and survivor. The competition in Europe is basically in ruins and rubble. Japan is quaking in their boots and is producing mass garbage much in the same vein as the Chinese do today, but with less quality control issues. I would like to think. There was once a time where it was called Jap crap. But needless to say, old stereotypes aside, everyone at this time is moving away from flathead engines, which, thanks to the Second World War, had outlived their usefulness. Flatheads are, in terms of modern engine standards, incredibly inefficient and very low compression ratio. I always, funny story, when I was up in Jacksonville, I gave a ride to a guy who was an ASC certified mechanic, quote unquote, or something like that, some kind of alphabet soup mechanic. And he said, yeah, there's no way an engine could run on, like this, could run on 7.5 to 1. And I'm just sat here like, you do realize flathead engines ran on, at most, that was the high compression model. Most of them could run as low as 5.5 to 1 on gasoline, believe it or not, which is kerosene burning low compression. But needless to say, at this time, flatheads are still very popular, especially in industrial applications, but they're being phased out. Thanks to the Second World War, overhead valve engines have truly proved their worth and usefulness. And the Chrysler Corporation aims to tag the new market that was created. That being returning GIs with gobs of money from Uncle Sam, aka Daddy Warbucks. That way he could buy a brand new car. And Chrysler had this little project during the end of the Second War. That being an airplane motor. That airplane motor was an inverted V16, so an A16, I guess you could call it, almost. Or a Delta 16, whichever way you want to look at it. That had a very unique cylinder head design, a hemispherical combustion chamber shape. What's so special about a hemispherical combustion chamber? Well, it allows for valves that are opposed from one another, as we are about to see in this Survivor Roadrunner. What that means is that the intake port is almost directly in line with the exhaust port, as I'm demonstrating here. It also means that the spark plug can be centered directly in the center. And in order to marketize and brag about it, Chrysler spends a lot, and I mean a lot, of money advertising such. Offering their new Chrysler Fire Dome hemispherical combustion chamber engines. And from what research I've dug up, the lowest compression ratio was about 6.5 to 1, with the highest being a relatively reasonable question mark. I think it was 8.5 to 1, and that was like a race spec engine. That was the raciest motor you could get at that time, which doesn't sound like a lot by today's standards, but bear with me. Those engines ranged in displacements from as small as 241 cubic inches, the smallest, which, believe it or not, was a Dodge motor, to the gargantuan Heath of the 392 cubic inch. But the most popular among drag racers, as Don Garlics will so eloquently tell you, was that of the 354, a motor displacement which is still available as a supercharged third-gen Hemi today in drag pack configuration, which means track only, not available for street use, meaning you cannot run this on the street because there is no VIN plate, therefore there is no way to insure the vehicle. That's how track-oriented it is. And in the early days, it was more of a promotional stunt to prove the viability of overhead valve engines, because everyone at the time was going to overhead valve engines, just because. And drag racers really, really liked this motor, because at that time, in the early 50s, the most horsepower any Joe Schmuck had ever experienced, say for a Duesenberg owner, which that's a special circumstance, and we'll talk about that another time, was maybe 200 horsepower, or creeping up there about, because no one could get a flathead engine more powerful than that, even with aftermarket quote-unquote cylinder heads and aftermarket quote-unquote camshafts. It just wasn't physically possible. So, in the early 50s, when Dodge dealerships and Chrysler and Plymouth and DeSoto even started advertising engines that could get 1 horsepower per cubic inch, people just couldn't believe it until they drove it, which was a game changer all on its own. The first gen Hemi sold incredibly well, but Chrysler saw that it was expensive to manufacture. The complicated valve arrangement, the unique valve covers, the rocker arm arrangement just made it expensive, especially the plug wires, which have to have their own special rubber boot just to go through the valve covers. Again, cost. So they started weaning the market onto the A-series motor, the polyheads as they were known, which were nicknamed single rocker Hemis. Kept production relatively cheap and made it easier to deal with. Unfortunately, drag racers were remiss for not being able to get fresh supply of parts for their beloved Fire Dome engines anymore. And as such, Chrysler had to endure a wave after wave of men and boys alike crying and chomping at the bit, "We want the Hemi back." So in 1962, I think it was. No, 64. 64 was the first year. Chrysler took to NASCAR with a brand new motor based on their 413 and 426 Max Wedge motors. The 7-liter engine displaced 426 cubic inches and had a whole new cylinder head based on the iconic Fire Dome, now coined and copyrighted as Hemi. And it was this motor that forever cemented the legend of the hemispherical combustion chamber in pushrod engines. This one motor defined an entire generation of muscle car owners. Factory rating claimed 425 horsepower at 5,000 RPM and some 493 foot-pounds of torque at 4,800 RPM. A respectable number by no measure, or by any measure. But what people don't understand, game, I need you to cooperate. Is that because of rising insurance costs, because the insurance companies were trying to crack down on higher horsepower vehicles, that dealers had to start underrating their engines. So Chrysler naturally helped them do so. And where did it go? Oh, you can't be serious. Tell me I did not just do that. Son of a bitch!
What?
You'll see on stream in a moment.
Alright, let's get back over to the stream. Let's browse on Facebook. What am I looking for?
Give it a sec. Am I still working on the car?
You're still on the engine, yeah.
Give it a sec.
The game froze up.
Getting there. Give it a sec.
You put it in parking.
Yep. I was trying to move it to lifter 1, and no, it wanted to go back to the garage.
Yep.
I've
done that a few times myself, so don't feel too bad.
It's just, that's all that time wasted going there, getting the one vehicle, getting back there, waiting. I should swap over to an LED bulb.
What, for your desk lamp?
Yeah. Because there's a lot of heat in this room to begin with.
Yeah.
Oh, so it is on the...
My desk lamp has a weird type of bulb that I don't think I can get an LED.
What, is it like the circular bulb?
No, it's like it's a thin bulb, like a long, not like a tube, but like it's got a weird end to it, right? Instead of turning it in, you shove it in.
Oh, so wait, it's like a bar light? Like
no, it's not a bar light.
Like the bulb has two contacts on either end? Like a tube?
No. The two contacts on one end. I can turn my camera on if you want.
It's not going to do you any good. I'm going to just keep on going with CMS 18.
Alright.
So it's not a fluorescent light like in the traditional sense?
No, it's an incandescent bulb, but it's got like a weird connector.
Huh.
It's not something standard you'd see in a regular light. Like, you can still get the bulbs. I have spares. I bought a bunch when I used to use this light all the time. But, yeah. It's, weird.
So
My mom bought some more lights to have them too, so I think they're becoming more of a standard thing for smaller lights now.
Huh.
But, yeah, actually, I think I can get an LED version. But, I mean, I've already got one working bulb in the lamp right now and a spare in the closet, so I'm not going to bother until both of those get burnt out.
Right. Alright. Retrieve the car.
Yep.
Alright, I got a 446 pack in here, too. Is this the Monaco, or is this the, What one are you again? You're just the Plymouth stock V8.
So you know the Melrose credit area, right?
Vaguely.
Right next to the movie theater? With like the little armor stands with like everyone who's built in Melrose.
Right.
Well, I just updated that in the snapshot to see what it would look like with the new granite slabs and birch signs. Birch signs need a new texture though, because they're using the default.
Right.
But everything else has proper texture, and it looks quite nice actually.
Right.
Because before I was using quartz slabs, and those just looked off.
Right. Is this the Nova?
Yeah. And then I'm still trying to decide what walls to use for the balcony supports.
I'll work on you at some point. What am I gonna do with you?
Oh, you have a bus.
Yeah, the Mac bus. i6 model.
Mm.
That parking job, though. Alright, let's see. Back to garage.
Yeah.
Anyways, where was I? Right, we were on second gen. Because of rising insurance costs, and because vehicles over a certain horsepower gap, a lot of manufacturers started purposely underrating their engines. While not as bad as everyone else, Chrysler was the biggest abuser of this fact. For example, the 440, both its numbers were accurately claimed, being the biggest V8 displacement-wise Chrysler made. With the mag version, a single 4-barrel option, making a solid 375 horsepower. And the 6-pack version making a solid 390, 395, depending on who you talk about, horsepower. But the Hemi? At 5,000 RPM, yeah, it makes 425 horsepower. But that ain't where the peak power is. Everyone fucking knew it who bought it. Because that damn sure would walk over every Chevrolet ever made at that time. Not even the 427 Copo motor could keep up. And those were getting up there in power. Those were accurately rated, I would like to point out. About 430-ish horsepower, somewhere in that range. But at 6,300, and I will cite Nick's Garage for having a other than stock 426 Keeper Hemi that made at 6,300 a respectable 492 horsepower and 495 pound-foot of torque at like 48, 49 something, which is nothing to sniff at. The reason motors like this and the 340 both had their horsepower be rated such was insurance costs. It was true, they made more horsepower, but they didn't advertise that because the insurance of the vehicle would have gone up significantly, and that would have deterred buyers from buying the vehicles new. So you want to keep your prices low, but at the same time make sure that people can afford them. Well, you underrate them. Of course, that was under the old net horsepower, not gross horsepower, or something like that. That was under the old standards, and that was what they did when they dyno tested. Was they hooked it up to a battery. They did not have an alternator. They did not have a water pump. They had no power steering. It was what just the crank shaft put out, and nothing sucking power anywhere. That's where that horsepower system came. So take that as you will. Let's see. All right, let's try this again. Where were we? We need to clean up your rims, old girl. This here old Roadrunner has seen some time. Right. Let's be neat with the old girl. And without a doubt, this motor cemented the name Hemi in the analogs of muscle car history. Game, I'd appreciate you cooperating.
What?
Oh, it did its thing. Okay. Sneaking like a snack. Anyways, when the 426 Hemi left production in 1971, many a muscle car fan and drag racer alike were left with an empty wound that was not easily filled. A hole in their soul of sorts that could only be filled with the love of that engine. And while it is true that the 426 as a race car only spec motor continued production until at least 1974, not available to the general public, many were remiss when Chrysler canceled every remaining big block production in 1978, both with the onset of the second gas crisis coming around the bend, rising fuel costs, and ever increasingly higher demands on emission standards. Chrysler could see the end of the line, and it didn't look good. So, as a last-ditch effort, the big blocks were killed off. As far as I can tell, 1979 saw the last big block installed for the last time. And from then, the venerable small block 318 and 360 had to soldier on by themselves for another few years. Not an easy task to manage. But then the 90s came around, and after Lee Iacocca had, by some miracle, maintained to keep Chrysler not only out of debt but actually profiting again, the company was rewarded with an engine that no American had ever seen before, the Viper V10. The original models, based on the 360, were nicknamed homologized or Siamese blocks, and were later redeveloped to do other purposes. But that's neither here nor there. America fell again deeply in love with massive displacement. With 488 cubic inches, it proved that Americans still had a deep love for big engines. A love that just isn't going away, no matter how high the fuel cost. Enter Mercedes-Benz. Although I will not be the first nor the last to disparage this company, it needs to be stated that no matter what, due to higher standards in emissions, it meant that the old Magnum engine, which had been in production since 1992, needed a quick replacement. And so, in 2000, if I'm not mistaken, or thereabout, pretty sure it was at the Detroit Auto Show, Daimler Chrysler, at that time, debuted the first new Hemi in some 30 years. The 5.7 liter, displacing 345 cubic inches, was a game changer for everyone at the show. It was the first time Chrysler started producing its legendary Hemi brand and started peddling it as such, something that it hadn't done in many years. Both in terms of performance, it was stout, with the early ones making only 345 horsepower. It still was a respectable engine, making the legendary threshold of 1 horsepower per cubic inch. Let's see, I am looking for you. With the return of the 5.7, it meant that people once again rediscovered their passion and their love for the Hemi. And it need not be stated that it was good. Let's see. Right, there's an A and a B head, isn't there? Yep, yeah, there is. God damn it. Let's see, and we want you. We want you. I'll worry about piping later. You and you. Gotta have you. No, wait. Can't. We don't need you. Well, we have to have this. We have to have that. Gotta have the cap. Screw you, Porsche. Gotta have the plug wires, because how else are we gonna support it? Gotta have the better intake. Let's see, what am I missing here? Just because I'm pretty confident saying that. Oh, we gotta have these pop-top pistons. I do apologize for stopping the story. I just have to get these parts sorted away before anything else. Let's see. Gotta have you. I hope that's everything. Right, that's come off. I think that's everything. Ooh, that brake cylinder looks crusty. I have to replace that. With the debut of the 5.7 at the Detroit Auto Show, people were excited. A new V8 with a legendary name behind it. But could it prove its worth? Well, as many found out going into the coming years as the 2003 production began, it found a fairly loyal following of muscle car fans from years gone by. proving it to be not only a solid daily driver with the MDS system, multi-displacement system, but also as just a hot rod motor. Though underutilized, I think, as such, because, well, Chevy had the LS out at this time. No. No. Bruh. Did I only buy 2? Are you kidding me? Well, that's just insulting. Right. As the years rolled by, even a familiar face to go with the Hemi name came back, the Dodge Challenger. Optioned out with an 8.6 or 6-speed in the early years, or an 8-speed automatic, as it is standard now, or a 6-speed manual, a Tremec T56, same as the Viper. The Challenger was a credit to its predecessor's name, both in terms of performance and styling, and handled so much better because of modern suspension and the like. While it was definitely heavier than its predecessor, people immediately fell in love. Rear-wheel drive, front engine, V8, manual transmission. It's a match made in heaven. And Mopar enthusiasts the world over celebrated the birth of a new muscle car, and what could maybe be called the last muscle car. But gone were the days of when SRT's predecessor, that being the Ram Chargers, are around. Their modern counterparts, Street and Road Technologies, SRT, had taken up the mantle of the performance division within Chrysler. And man, do they live up to that title. They are hot rodders at night, Chrysler employees by day. These fine folks constantly pushing the limits of what their own company's potential is. Truly a credit to their names. Never satisfied with the output of the 345, they were constantly looking to bump power and make bigger and badder engines. In 2008, there was also the launch not only of the new Challengers, but of the new 6.1 liter engine. Now highly sought after, even if it has a head gasket problem. These engines made a solid and realistic 425 horsepower and are incredibly stout motors. Unfortunately short-lived, only living up to 2010, being usurped by the now infamous 392 cubic inch engine, a callback to years gone by of when Hemis were still finding their footing. And much like finding their footing in the days of old, these new Hemis had to make themselves known. With the 392 making a respectable 485 horsepower at present, it is not any small means that they are making serious horsepower. And from what I've been told, the RT or Scat Pack packages that these engines can be equipped with bump it up to 508, which in terms of crank horsepower is something nothing to sniff at. A true credit to the Hemi name, more than the original 426. But that was still never enough. Because the 392 shared the same general architecture as the 5.7, this meant that there was some good parts swapping, same with the 6.1. And they liked the idea of the 6.1 just a little too much. Enter 2015, the Hellcat. By taking the 5.7's crank and sticking it in a 392 block, Chrysler engineers had discovered a horsepower increase the likes of which they'd never seen, albeit perhaps at bottom end torque. But that's neither here nor there. It's all about the flash and the numbers game. And with the Hellcat producing from the beginning a 707 crank horsepower with a manual option, made it a true credit to the Hemi name. But this was still not enough for the crazy folks at SRT, looking for ever more power. And with the departure soon coming of the Viper, they needed something to replace it. Enter the Dodge Demon. Taking already a terrifyingly powerful engine and making it even more powerful with an even bigger blower, bumping it up from a 1.6 liter blower to a 2.7 liter blower. This is not your granddad's muscle car. This is a true drag strip ready demon. And truly a credit to the Hemi name. But as of right now, it seems SRT can't even begin to stop trying to top themselves. But this time, they're going nostalgic. Since about 2013, I've heard rumors that there's a special drag pack car. Now, put in perspective, these cars have existed since the muscle car days, where they have you drive it off the lot, that's as far as the warranty covers vehicles. That being a purpose-built race car that you could buy from the dealership. What did this amount to? Well, in older days, it meant the 426 wedge, and in later iterations, a handful of darts that had Hemis and 440s stuffed under their hoods. But in recent iterations of the drag pack, the smallest engine you could buy was the 354. A homage to the original 354 of the same displacement that was known throughout the drag racing world in the early days of drag racing in Hemis. This is offered as a supercharged, not available as naturally aspirated V8 in track-only cars. You could also at one point order a Viper V10 in one of these cars, mostly Challengers, because Challengers. Though, at one point in time, I have seen a 345 non-supercharged car. But that was probably the base model for, if I had to guess, 2008. And I use the term base model very liberally here. The biggest engine obviously being the Viper at some 511 cubic inches at 8.3, 8.4 liters, which is just absurd. The amount of torque that engine produces is just insane. And will make a competition drag car very quickly. All you need to do is throw a couple of performance parts at it, and bada bing, bada boom, you got one of the meanest street cars on the planet. Well, track cars anyways. But there was one engine in that lineup that I've neglected to mention until now. A 7-liter, 426 cubic inch V8 based on the 392. Why is this such a big deal? Well, because it had been creating a reputation as a very potent engine. But it was never available for public consumption. In fact, you had to be a drag racing team that was interested in buying the vehicle with the said motor. That is, until now. It seems SRT can't help but spread the love for this motor. because it seems, and it will more than likely be confirmed at SEMA this year on October 30th at 4:26 p.m., that the elephant returns to the public's hands. Now, more than likely, what's going to happen, if this is the motor I think it is, it's going to be primarily sales based on the crate motor. At present, there's the Hell Crate and Demon Crates. Well, I think there's a Demon Crate. I know for a fact there's a Hell Crate, which is a Hellcat crate motor of your description, or a 392 crate motor, or even a 5.7 crate motor. So, pick your displacement, pick your flavor of engine, and voila, you have what you want. But what makes the 426 special is the nostalgia factor. It's one of those motors that has cemented itself in iconography the world over. If there's one V8 that the rest of the world should know that defines America as American as apple pie, it's the 426 cubic inch Hemi. And if it is true that it is coming back to the street, I wonder, what does this mean for the long-term viability of the motor? Because here's my problem with it. If, at present, given the current political atmosphere, engines of this description may not be long for the world. Hell, we may not, most of us may not be long for this world at present, just out of concern for the environment. This is not something that I say with any kind of lightness. I say this with the full seriousness of a heart attack. At present, climatological scientists have given the world, specifically the United States, a deadline. Fall in line and drastically reduce carbon emissions within the next 12 years, or we will have done irreparable damage to the environment. We've already passed one point of no return, and that is pre-industrial temperatures. Unfortunately, at present it seems that we are going to ignore this one too. And if that's the case, it could mean disastrous consequences, both in terms of the auto industry and for mankind as a whole. I pray that hydrogen fuel cells become a thing in order not only to save internal combustion engines, but humankind as a whole. Now, assuming that nothing changes with the environment, what is the long-term game plan here? Well, simple. I'm assuming that the fine folks at FCA, Fiat Chrysler Automotive, are going to assume that nothing changes, and if that is the case, which unlikely that it is, it means that they're planning on making this a crate engine available for the aftermarket. With the return of an iconic legend like this, it means that they are trying to buy into that nostalgia wave. Although gas prices were exorbitantly high during the later 70s and into the 80s, the 426 reigned supreme over many a drag strip. And in fact, most drag cars that are some of the fastest cars in the world, Leah Pritchett, only displace 500 cubic inches because that is what NHRA mandates. But what they don't realize is that they're getting redonkulous amounts of horsepower out of these vehicles. 10, 12, 13, 14,000 horsepower out of a single engine. Absolute monsters. Legends the likes of which that are truly the definition of what a high-performance engine is, and it is because of that hemispherical combustion chamber design that lends itself so well to these high-horsepower applications. That being said, in terms of crate motors, this might be priced outside of Joe Blow's budget. At present, the Hell Crate, last I checked, is like some 30 or 40 grand. Admittedly, that's a drag and drop, plug and play setup. Not something to sniff at. A very nice setup indeed. I wish more manufacturers would do that. But if the Hell Crate is at that price, that means that considering the horsepower output, that this would have to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 grand in order to be competitive, about what a 392 crate motor would probably run. And actually, it might be cheaper than that. 392 is probably in the $12,000 to $15,000 range.
Rock?
Yes?
I hate to interrupt you, but a little off topic. The bombing thing, bombs, whatever you want to call it.
MAGA bomber?
Yeah. It's up to 13 now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
They're finding more.
Yeah. Because didn't you say it was like 10 last you checked?
Last I heard it was 10.
Yeah, and then I heard 12 like about an hour and a half ago. Now it's up to 13. Anyways, I'm gonna grab some food. You keep doing your thing.
Right. Let's see. Exhaust. We want... If that gives you any indication of what time of year this is and when this occurred, that should be all the indication you need. Talking about the MAGA bomber. Fucking degenerate. Needless to say, moving forward, this may not be what everyone's hyping it up to be. And I say that as a guy who is a diehard Mopar guy. I think this is going to be a loss leader. Believe me, I love Chrysler Dodge. I really do. The Trackhawk is amazing. They are truly something special, these cars. That said, I don't think this is going to be the first in a long line of successes, but a final farewell. Given what we have in terms of climatological science based on models and predictions, I think it's only reasonable to assume this is the last hurrah. I think this is coming up on the end of the Hemi, and this time I think it's going to stay dead. I don't think, unless we can make hydrogen work, I don't foresee this being good. And I say that. Believe you and me, I want this to be the best thing ever. But if we're looking just from a number standpoint, I think this is not going to be a consumer product outside of crate engine. I think this is only going to be a consumer product in terms of, well, just a crate engine. I don't think this is going to be anything that is going to be put into a production vehicle other than a drag pack car, which, believe me, I want that to be different. But fuel prices, fuel economy matters nowadays. When the original 426 was made, no one gave a damn about fuel because fuel was dirt cheap. It was 50 cents at most, 36 cents on average back in them days in the late 60s, early 70s. Gas was dirt cheap. And yet, things really haven't changed. Cost of living's gone up. Price of things have gone up, but wages have stayed fairly stagnant over the past couple of years. I want this to be the next hurrah. I want this to be the next chapter, but I think it's going to be the last. I want this to be the next big thing, but I don't think it will be. I think this is going to be the final farewell. I really do say that with all honesty. Which saddens me to no end. I want there to be more Hemis like this. I want there to be stupid, crazy horsepower that admittedly might cost an arm and a leg. I want there to be vehicles that are just batshit insane to the point of absurdity like this. To put in perspective, what the 426 meant to baby boomers is what the Demon meant to us. It was that insane. No one had heard of a production car at that time in the early 60s cracking 425 horsepower, let alone 500, which is what it actually made. I want this to be so much more, but I don't think it will be. I think it is only going to be a crate motor. But at the very least, even if this is the final hurrah, it's going to go out with a bang. That much I'm certain of. Things are just that way, and I say this not with malice, but with love and caring for the company, because, well, Chrysler's always had the prettiest cars, they've always had the most advanced engines. I mean, put in perspective, MDS, multi-displacement system, Chrysler's own in-house setup. While it is true that Chrysler was not the first to use cylinder deactivation technology, that honor belongs to Cadillac. It should go without saying, though, that Chrysler was the first one to make it work. Unlike Cadillac, Chrysler had no issues making MDS work. I refer, of course, to Cadillac's infamous 468 engines, the 472s. Big motors in their own right. But their problem was that the technology of the day just couldn't keep up with the demands of the driver. They were slow to shift. They were incredibly taxing on the engine and had just bad reliability in terms of the actual cylinder deactivation. It was advanced technology, and it was the cutting-edge shit for its time, traditional Cadillac. But unfortunately, the first couple of tries of any new technology is always going to be shit. That's just the way things are. Give it a couple of years, prices come down, the technology becomes more readily available, it becomes more reliable, it becomes better.
Like RTX.
I hope I didn't just lose a rim because you had a crumple. Thank fucking God. Now, if I don't lose a single fucking rim, I'm gonna be happy. Needless to say, I think I've spoken my piece on the new Elephant, which is probably going to be a crate motor. While we have yet to hear definitive signs of, I'm confident enough to say and claim such. Alright. Rims are repaired. Let's see, we want tires. Ooh. Yeah, let's go. Fuck a stone. Today we're big wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, we want, let's see, 215 was stock. So let's go 275s. Oh yeah, this is way too skinny a tire, but who cares? Let's see, install. I should get around to addressing this at some point. Needless to say, I think it's going to be a big deal, but I think I've spoken my piece. Anyways, I've been Rock the Box. Y'all been magnificent. I'll see you in the next one.